Hello, thank you. How are you after lunch? Awake? So there's this theory that it's kind of the worst slot that you can get on a conference is right after lunch because everybody has eaten, you're sitting down, you're relaxing, all the blood rushes to your stomach, and you have none of it left in your brain. So I researched a little bit about it, and what I found was, in fact, and this is actually something about judges, but judges are much more productive after lunch. So I think there is some hope for us. I hope you don't judge us in a bad way, though. But it's maybe not such a bad slot after all. So we're pretty much at the second point of the day with where you should have actually the best attention as per this thing. So the DevOps Con and the topic of DevOps, and I was thinking, well, what are we going to say, and what are we going to talk about? I mean, when I think of DevOps, it's like somebody tells you to talk about the cloud or big data, and it's like one of those fluffy topics that everybody interprets in their own way, and how do you give a recipe for something that you can cook in 1,000 different options? So, when I think of DevOps, that's usually the meme that pops in my mind, right? It worked fine in dev, it's an ops problem now, the house is burning up, but it's none of my business really. So I thought instead of really going into giving you a recipe or a cookbook or something to tell you how you should do things, I would go forward and tell you how we actually create GitHub at GitHub. Not only how we create it, but I will go even a step further, because for us, DevOps is just actually the beginning of the whole thing. It's way more than this and way more people than just Dev and Ops. It's actually the whole company. So I would basically, my view and idea was really to give you a look under the bonnet of GitHub, how do we work together, and hopefully this will give you some ideas that you can maybe take away for you, for your own companies, for your own business, for the own way that you collaborate and work with your colleagues. And why did I choose this story, or to tell it in this way, is because I've been in IT for 10 years, and I'm probably, or pretty much surely, the least intelligent person in this room. I'm not a developer, and I'm not an ops person. Still in IT for 10 years. The last line of code that I wrote was in a language called Turbo Pascal in high school. Who of you has used Turbo Pascal? That's the old people in the room. Thank you. Thanks for confirming this. And the cool thing is I joined GitHub about 2 years ago myself. And after 8 years of being in an IT company, it was like, whoa, where have I been for the past 8 years? Where have I lived? Like, how different is it actually to work here in every single aspect of the day-to-day work? So, as a non-developer at GitHub, I will basically tell you how daily life goes for us. And just to make sure that I don't need to explain what is GitHub, who has a GitHub account in here? Good, okay, that's perfect. Okay, but there is actually one of the best kept secrets of GitHub itself. Is everybody knows the stickers and the t-shirts and all of this, but who of you knew that you can actually install GitHub on your own servers as well? It's like 30%. Yeah, that's pretty much the best kept secret, because for actually more than 6 years you could actually download and install GitHub and run it on your servers as well behind your own firewall. That's seems to be quite a thing that nobody knows about, and we try not to tell anyone about, apparently. I'll tell you a little bit of the GitHub history so that you know how we grew, where it comes from, where we stand today, and then how we work. So the picture that you see is from Wired magazine when it wrote an article about GitHub. And those are the three founders over there in San Francisco who started the whole story of GitHub. Basically, as you are in Silicon Valley, what do? You have a great idea, you come together with a couple of friends, create it, and you become a millionaire. So they had this amazing idea. And guess what? It had nothing to do with GitHub. It was just some other project about family photos. And however, they had other jobs. They didn't want to meet up all the time and agree, what are we going to develop? What are we going to write? How are we going to do this? How are we going to review each other's code? Are we going to meet in a cafe in San Francisco and exchange it on stick or email each other? So they just spun up a server, and that was the time when Linus Torvalds had his great Git speech and release, when Git kind of started getting traction. And they opened up this Git server, and they just added some more functionalities to share each other's code, to do actually a pull request, to comment each other's code, and to collaborate without having to sit in the same room or meet face to face and in person. So they used it as one of their tools that they created for themselves. And more friends started coming on board and asking, well, can I actually have access to your server? It's pretty cool. So more and more people started joining the whole thing, and it just was this free server that was running until companies came over and said, well, actually, we'd love to use the same thing, but we just don't want everyone else to see our code. Can we please pay you some money and just hide our code? And they were like, sure. And they went and checked, well, how much do we charge? They found out that the smallest amount they could charge per month over a credit card was $8. And that's what Dropbox charged as well. So it was $8 for your private repo, how it started. And that's the moment when GitHub was founded. That was actually a complete side product. And after some years, it took so much traction that the original project was just left behind and forgotten. So it was actually something that was created out of pure need and usability, as opposed to having a business plan behind it. Does anybody know the original name of GitHub?
Yeah, Dr. Awesome.
Yes! Okay, you get a present, actually. Prepared a present for this question. You must have been in one of the other presentations, or are you just a super fan?
Yeah, I've been to the DevOps Days in Berlin.
All right, okay, cool. Well, you get an Octicon. Cool. So yeah, that was the original name of GitHub. It was Logical Awesome. And then they decided to actually go for GitHub. But with this, actually, the whole aspect of social coding was born. And it's this thing, social coding, it kind of sounds funny, but it's this thing that allows people that never met each other, who don't even speak each other's language, to work on a project together, an open source project, maybe in different time zones, and to contribute and to collaborate. And it basically started taking up really huge critical masses of developers. So what I did last night is I ran an analysis that's fresh from last evening on Google Trends, simply comparing GitHub to some other version control and collaboration systems, purely based on search. It's nothing else. And what we can see is the yellow line, that's Subversion, the blue line is GitHub, and then you have some others. And now, just to verify another, we've seen that most of you have a GitHub account, and I suppose you use it privately. Who of you uses GitHub for work today? That's about 10%, right? Who of you uses Subversion at work? It's getting less and less every conference. Interesting. So normally it's about half. We're about 30% today, I would say, which is actually good. But the shocking thing is sometimes that you see the adoption of new tools and new ways to write code and software always happens privately first, because the way the resistance for you to move to a new procedure, process, ideology, culture, or tool privately is much lower than with companies. And today we're finding still a lot of companies on a tool set and on a process set and on a mindset from 10 years ago or 8 years ago, lagging behind where they're today. As an additional fact, and that I did yesterday, just to show you a few more things about GitHub, this is a snapshot also from yesterday evening, from where the colleagues from GitHub are as of now. So every dot has one or several hovers set across the globe, and we basically classify our colleagues in 3 categories: the ones in an office, the ones in home office, and the nomads. The nomads are the ones who don't even have an address. So basically, you might have a laptop, your backpack, and you get, one of our front-end developers popping up in Australia and in Africa and South America, wherever he wants. As long as you're good and as long as you are online, you can actually contribute and work. But the thing is as well that the person in Hawaii and the person here, apparently in Thailand, at the moment, have a pretty tough time collaborating or having a stand-up meeting or a conference call. And if you add to the mix maybe a couple of people in the same team on the same project who are based in Europe, you basically do not have the possibility to talk to each other real time. So that's kind of the status quo that we're having. I will get back to this at a later stage to explain how we work around this and how we actually turn this into our favor. And last but not least, I ran this statistics yesterday. Those are 2 graphs. The upper graph is the number of deploys in the past week, and the graph below is the number of deploys in the past month. So you see that we deployed this week or last week 400 times into production on github.com, or 1,500 times. So we had 1,500 versions in production of GitHub just during the last 31 days. To add on top of this, GitHub is, I think, one of the websites, top websites of the internet. It varies between top page 40 and 60 of the whole internet. So imagine you have this distributed team that we have globally. We have one of the most busy websites of the entire internet. We're deploying, 40 to 70 times per day in production. And I think GitHub has about 15,000 user registrations every day. So for me, I was like, whoa, like what's the secret? How does it even work? Like how can you go and do this actually as a company and sustain it and kind of still stay productive? And it was a little bit difficult to kind of summarize it all because it's a lot of impressions that come to you and that you want to absorb and you try to absorb. And the first one, and I think that's just nothing that you need to take with you, but it's about the culture and the philosophy and about how you tick. And the common philosophy that we had was kind of boiled down to the so-called Zen of Github. And the Zen of GitHub, and I'm putting this more up for you to access and to use for yourself, is you can actually API into this, and the Octocat will always give you one of these developer wisdoms that you can use and pull from. But there are some things that are really the key principles that we want to apply in our product and in the way that we work. So, for instance, favor focus over features. It's so easy to get drawn away into fulfilling everyone's wishes for every nitty-gritty feature, but you're actually missing on your focus and what you're actually trying to achieve. So in order for us to really put in a new functionality, we really want to make sure that this is something that drives the core interest of our users and of our service. Non-blocking is better than blocking. Don't just stop something because you think it's made good or bad. Let people be creative. Don't put up unnecessary processes on everything, but let things be tried. I mean, on 1,500 deployments per month, some of them might be taken back, but at least we've moved 1,500 steps ahead, and maybe we'll have to move 50 or 100 back, but that's still many steps further that we've come. So this is more something that we've put up, but the culture and the way you understand how you do your product for us is extremely important. And the second thing that I would say that for me is one of the biggest and most important topics is the asynchronous communication, which really enables us to do everything. I mean, ultimately, I'm back to this slide here. Good luck making a decision on real time with this type of distribution across the globe on actually a fairly small team of 600 people. So I prepared a little video just to show you my experience from my previous decision making in the previous companies that I've seen, and then I'll tell you how it looks like here at GitHub.
Business practices that refuse to die. Number 44, email trees. Let's keep this simple. You need to make a decision, but need the input from 4 team members. So you draft an email and send it to the team. Person number 1 replies to all, so does person number 2. But 3 and 4 only reply back to you. In addition, unbeknownst to you, person number 4 emails person number 5 who thinks they should have a say in the decision as well. Person number 5 replies to everyone. You gather all the feedback and send a synopsis back out to everyone. You also receive emails from persons number 1 and 2 asking why number 5 was included in on the discussion. You reply back to them that, although not ideal, it'll be okay. Person number 5 also forwarded the email to person number 6, who at this time also replied to all, but didn't get the last email. So, to include her, you forward her the last email and CC everyone else just to let them know that person number 6 was in on the discussion now too. You now email everyone with a final decision and want their buy-in. Person number 6 asks for one small change. You agree, make the change, and email everyone again for an agreement. Everyone emails you that they agree. By the end of this madness, 61 emails have been sent to make one decision.
So who has been in this situation before, apart from me? Thank you. Excellent, yes. So, and then if I ask you in about 7.5 months, who made the decision and why, and imagine there's a new person, I guarantee you that's pretty much the best way to never ever in the history of time find this decision again, why it was made, the context of the decision, who made it, and who was actually responsible for the whole thing. So literally within like 4 weeks of time, this whole thing is history and the decision is legacy and the reason for the decision is lost. That was awful. I mean, thousands of unread emails that I've had in my inbox. So to my big surprise, on my first day when I joined GitHub, I got an email account with this statement here. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. I mean, this is the goddess of my day-to-day work, is the goddess of email. She tells me what to do in the morning and what comes and what I need to do. And, it's the one thing, my main task manager, and, how workflow process and everything. And at GitHub, they told me, no, we use GitHub for everything. And guess what? Everyone can read all of the communication here. So unless you really have a serious HR topic to discuss, it's all on GitHub. Well, how is that even possible? Well, there are repositories for everything. We have a repository for marketing. We have a repository for engineering. We have a repository for sales, for HR. There is obviously the repository that is GitHub/GitHub/GitHub, where the actual code is on the whole thing. But, we have hundreds of repositories within GitHub. So even for this here event here that we're on today, it requires some logistics. We have a booth and all of this. We use the email to communicate with the colleagues from the organizer, from DevOpsCon, but we didn't send a single email internally. In fact, and what I thought is I'll just show you. Oh no, actually I'm not going to show you. So go to the page. Here we go. And I'm opening up, and this is a GitHub repository where you can see the DevOpsCon in Munich in December, all the details. Everybody can actually look into this, colleagues I know, colleagues I don't know. People then agreeing on who's going to come, commenting. Here's when I accepted this keynote. I think it was here. Yeah, I'm in, right? So basically, not to go into the details, but this information here will be, yes? On comments, yes, I can show you. There is this little bell here that gives me all the things in a nice, lovely summary on everything. So basically, after we're done, so people contributed to this. We know how we got to this stage, and ultimately, when we're done, we'll post our feedback in here. We'll close the issue, and next year we'll know what went well, what didn't, what was the feedback, what's the outcome, what do we want, what did we achieve, do we want to do it again? And it will never be lost. Who made the decision, who was there, and my colleagues can actually call me up and tell me, well, how did it go last year? I'm having the keynote, what should I look after? So that's an information that is never lost, and where people start to contribute that I've never met or that I didn't even personally know within the company who come in and help me. So that's to the asynchronous communication part. The thing about GitHub as well is that everyone is a developer. Like, I don't write the code, but maybe speaking to all of the customers, I have feedback or information that a normal developer wouldn't have. So that goes actually way beyond the DevOps. So people in the field from a specific subject matter expert should be the ones who also can suggest what to do with the code. And because they know what functionality is required. They know better than the developer itself. So within the GitHub features requests, we have a feature request repository where we basically put in an open issues for the functionalities that our customers would like to hear or to have, and our engineers and developers can immediately go ahead with it. So it's much broader than just dev and ops. It's about actually including the entire company because the code is part of the company. And that's where we actually use the GitHub flow for. Who knows the GitHub flow? Pull requests and all of this? Right, the GitHub flow is applicable to everything. And that's what we use it for. I mean, here is something from a repo on GitHub where GitHub flow is applied to laws. Newspaper articles. Bloomberg is using GitHub for their journalists because they say an article is actually a piece of code. It requires review, contributions, CI integration, maybe for spell check or forbidden words, and then it gets published. So just to really go for the ones who didn't know about GitHub Flow, in GitHub you want to have a new feature or you want to have a new version of an HR policy or of a travel policy or whatever you would like to do, you create a new feature branch. And I can actually, you can add commits before, but in GitHub, we immediately open a pull request. Because in a pull request, we describe what we try to achieve, what we want to improve. So you put the context about the code already there before the code is even written. So what you would like to achieve, and you invite your colleagues to discuss and review and collaborate. And this here means human colleagues, so your co-developers, it means the ops people, so they should immediately know what you're trying to come up with and where the roadblocks come. It means the security folks. It means maybe legal, and what the implementations of this feature can have from a legal side. This has an impact on everyone, and that's where actually on the code the whole context and the whole discussion take place. But we're not only involving humans here, we're also involving machines. So your CI integration, for instance, that's just a small list of things that integrate at GitHub, and this is taken from actual GitHub repo. A developer has 15 automated immediate tests that run as soon as he pushes the commit button, no matter how big or small the commit is, to provide him immediate feedback whether it's something that is acceptable or not that can be going through, or whether he can actually even click the merge pull request button or not. There's also the human reviewers that come into play. So do we actually want this in our code base? And once this is true, we're a bit different at GitHub. We ship. So we haven't merged it yet into master, but we ship. And where do we ship it to? Well, maybe to staging environment, but ultimately everything before it's merged gets shipped to production before we merge it to the master. Why? We have 40 million users every month, it's pretty much the best test environment to test it with your users. And you can, within minutes, you have basically all the feedback, whether something works or not, from your community. Now, guess who's responsible if you push a new feature into GitHub and it doesn't work? So you bring down github.com. It's the last person who committed, so it's the developer, it's not the ops. It's not, it's the person who basically pushed. The last person to push is the one to carry the responsibility until the next one occurs. So we have full automation built into deploying, into monitoring, into being alerted if something goes wrong. And then if things really go wrong, we basically revert back to master, because the master is something that always works and that we've proven to be functioning. And which basically brings us to the topic of DevOps and continuous delivery. I will wrap it up because I have 5 more minutes, as the friendly lady here indicates. And this is the famous DevOps picture and the wall, right? So that's no one talks to each other, and it's we deliver our work, but there's different expectations on the other side of the wall. And how do we push this through? This whole thing, and still today there's many companies who actually break up their teams into developer, tester, Q&A, the ops person, the project manager person. So it's them always. But with GitHub we're actually one team, and we're united by the by far busiest person, but colleague within GitHub, and it's an open source bot that we wrote. It's called Hubot. And Hubot is just amazing, and it's actually not a joke. The first day I joined GitHub, I was dreaming about Hubot because it's magical. This guy does anything. He's in all the systems. He's in GitHub. He's in Slack. We use Slack for chat. He's in all the test systems, and he's got login to everything. So actually, as a GitHubber, I don't need to log into a system that gives me some graphs and to run some reports. I just tell Hubot to do it. He's logged in everywhere. He goes, does it, and puts it right back into chat. Even Wired wrote about it. So it's Hubot. It's the busiest colleague at GitHub. And what Hubot can or cannot do, I will try to demonstrate to you by actually going into our Slack system and give you a couple of fun commands. Since I'm not an engineer, I will try not to bring down GitHub, which wouldn't be pretty good, I guess. So if I switch over to Slack, and this is basically the GitHub Slack. I don't know how much you can see, but we have pretty cool commands and important commands in Slack, like animate, crazy, and then Hubot goes in and hopefully finds a GIF that is displayable in a bigger audience. So we have pretty cool things, or map me Munich. So it basically gives me a straight link to hopefully Google Maps and Munich. So there's loads of fun things that you can do with, but the essence of it is when you deploy something or when an ops person does it, they do everything in a chat room. So in the chat room you have the developers, you have the ops people, you have whoever wants to actually listening and watching into the tune, and they see when you deploy, you actually deploy from Slack. You enter a Slack command, everybody else in the company can see that you're queued up for deploying. Everybody can see that who's up next, who deployed, which reports they're looking at, and everybody's completely up to speed and up to date on where you are. So I actually, where is that? Atom. I can, for instance, show you the response time of GitHub in the past week. And if I'm... The danger room is actually one of the oldest chat rooms that GitHub has. It was, I think, the first chat room that GitHub as a company had. And it's still around, it's very active. But I'm not going to take you in there. But your colleagues from dev and ops, and everybody can actually see what you're doing, and they might know what you're doing, or they might just watch you. So, for instance, GitHub was subject to one of the biggest DDoS attacks in history. In a normal company, if something goes wrong internally or externally, you have the wise man disappearing in the basement and coming 4 hours later saying it's solved. And nobody has any idea what happened, but he was gone and he's back and it's all up and running. In GitHub, it's all public. So here you can actually see all the ChatOps commands that were given to actually prevent the DDoS attack, for instance. So the new engineers who come on board in our ops team, we just take them back to the Slack moment when we were attacked and show them how did we defend, how did our engineers defend, so you can learn immediately from your colleagues and the engineers. It's completely transparent for everyone. And this basically there's many more things, but I just wanted to show you. Here's when you want to queue for GitHub, you ask who is the next person to deploy, and you can join the queue. Then Hubot comes back when it's ready, informs you, hey, you're ready to deploy right now. First maybe to canary environment, and then you go off and deploy it to production. And afterwards you immediately also from Hubot get all the statistics and all of this. So as my time is up, quick wrap up. So what's in it, the whole story for me. My job at GitHub is actually talking to large corporations in Europe and in Germany. So like SAP and Zalando's and German Stock Exchange, and help them adapt more similar, or their own way of collaborating in DevOps for them through kind of the tooling of GitHub. And there has been proof that with a critical mass of developers and people, you can achieve things like inner source, so basically which is like open source behind your own firewall, by adopting this open communication and involving everybody into this. So by adapting the open source culture within your company. And the discussion that we always have is, we get invited and we're like, we want to have a DevOps tool stack and an agile tool stack. And then, fine, they set it up, and then what the first step is, they try to mimic their processes that they've had for the past 10 years in the new tools chain, just because the tools will make it great. But in fact, at some stage the realization comes, well, if I do this, I can't continue with my process. And you're like, yeah, that's right. But I've been doing this process for the past 10 years. And you're like, yeah, it's actually a complete change of the culture that comes. And it's actually the hard thing about it is because people have been building up systems, processes, measures to protect those, which are perfectly valid for years. So it's like their child that you see raising. You've been there with the first day, and then all of a sudden you want to go DevOps and you need to drop all of this emotions even that you've put into this in days and years of your life and switch to something completely new. And to finish with a quote from one large German corporation CEO, he said, "We have been suffocating ourselves with our own processes for the past 20 years. As of now, we will not define from a management level any processes for you at all." And that was quite a big shock to the engineers and took some time to understand, but people should be setting up their own processes, and this will actually drive the creativity and possibility. Thank you very much, unless you have questions.